Welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, my name is Bryan Jenks, and today we're talking about Logseq and how I use it for my developer blog, or DevLog. It's been a while since I've made an actual video that wasn't like a talk or pre-recorded, so yeah, hello, and I got a new camera and some other new gear, so hopefully the channel gets a little bit spiffier from now on. But, roll intro. So if you've seen any of the videos on this channel, you know that I talk a lot about Obsidian. I love Obsidian. I love it for zettelkasten. I love it for so many different things, including family ancestry, which I'm actually going to be doing a video on because that's getting a makeover as well. But one thing I actually felt some friction on was doing technical notes. Now, Logseq and Obsidian, for what I'm using it for, can both do exactly the same thing. It's just the experience of using Logseq for my devlog is different, and I like it. And it's a web app, so I can easily just use only the web app and have it completely and automatically sync to my GitHub profile the way I wanted it to, with minimal setup too. And, you know, sometimes you just want to use a different tool for a separation of concerns and just have the clarity of I'm only working on this thing at this moment. And that's what I'm doing with the devlog. So I'll go into some detail about how I'm doing this, what I'm doing, and what it looks like. I've been wanting to talk a little bit more about some more technical stuff, code, DevOps, programming, things a little bit more out of the, the theory of note-taking and knowledge management, just because like I have more than just one or two interests. I am pretty eclectic and I really like code and tech. So I might be talking more about that type of stuff on my channel, so I still want to gear it towards like what everyone else is looking for from the channel. So if you see some sort of overlap of what you're looking for, do let me know. Right now, these days, I'm looking a lot into Python and DevOps automation, GitHub Actions and Azure DevOps pipelines, YAML files, lots of stuff with GitHub. So I want to talk more about those things, but let me know what you would like to hear more about in that vein so that you see something that you like and I get to talk about something that I like. Win-win. The best ways to support the channel are, if you're going to do it on an ongoing basis, GitHub sponsors because they take no fees, followed by Patreon. If you're going to do like a one-time thing, buy me a coffee, PayPal are just fine. And if you just want to support me without any money involved, the best thing you can do is like, comment, subscribe, share the video, and that's it. So what is Logseq? Logseq is an outliner application that, makes it easy to take notes. It's pretty much like Rome, but different. All these apps have a large amount of overlap. Obsidian could be an outliner if you use specific plugins and always use outlining, but it's kind of a little bit more flexible and freeform. But with something like Logseq, I wanted to have like the rigid structure of it is an outliner app, so you have to use outlines. That combined with just a separate application that I like that could be just for my technical notes, my devlog, and things that I want to care about in the technical space that have nothing to do with zettelkasten. So I've actually done this, and I'm still porting things over. I'm separating my technical notes into Logseq and keeping my zettelkasten notes and all that stuff, family ancestry and everything, in Obsidian. So the only thing I'm using Logseq for is technical notes, things on tech, and my devlog. So what does Logseq look like? What does any of this look like? So if I show what I'm seeing, this is Logseq in the browser. Now there is a desktop app and I think that's still in beta. There's a lot more developments going on this and I'm honestly not super up to date on all of that because I'm not really as invested and super on top of this as I was with Obsidian. But as far as what I care about, it's awesome. I've had some issues with files getting changed and deleted or just weird stuff. So I keep like a really rigid workflow with this and I'll outline what that is. But you can see in here that this is actually live synced to a GitHub repo. I have to, add a repo. It'll ask you to add the application, all that other type of stuff. It's actually pretty automated, so it's and user friendly. And right now you see this little orange square. It's not green, which means it's busy. It's because this actual note here has focus. Now if I click out of here and it doesn't have focus, it turns green. There's no changes. Now if I actually write something today, which I think it was regex something or other, so let's just do to do and Do I have regular expressions? I do not. Regular expressions. And I want to add a link. Regular expressions. There we go. And I'm going to hit enter. And now it's orange. When I click off, it's going to be orange again. Something else is going on. So I'm going to wait, and it's going to sync and send all those changes to GitHub. The only downside of that as well is that GitHub gets a lot of commit spam because every time you make a change, it's pushing. So every time you leave a page that has focus, it's pushing. And so that can get a little bit of annoying. I've tried to change the settings. It just doesn't work sometimes, but I don't care. I honestly don't care about the commit spam, whatever. But I really like this interface, and I really like a lot of what this can do because now I have this little to-do item here. I have some queries set up, and I'm going to go show you all these details. But basically, it's just like Rome's daily notes. It drops you in the daily note, and I just have a bunch of notes every day for things I learn on my job, or things I want to look into, pieces of technical information, all different kinds of stuff. And I'm really enjoying it so far. So let's dive a little bit deeper into some of these details. All right, what I like about it: rigid outliner. It's private because it can go to a private GitHub repo. It's version controlled through GitHub and the Git repo. It's plain text, and it's using plain text files because once it hits GitHub, it's actually a plain text file. And with some of the new updates, those plain text files can be just Markdown, which is why Santi Younger, which I will probably put a link into that video in the timestamp below, did a video on how to actually use Logseq and Obsidian side by side, which is really freaking cool. And yeah, it's pretty much all the benefits that I like from Obsidian, version control, sync, plain text files, private, and you own your data. But now I actually get to use a rigid outliner that still is based on web technology, so I can actually still use some things like custom CSS. The Grovebox theme that you're seeing on my Logseq thing here, I'm the one that made the Grovebox theme. So you can get this theme now, and it's on, I think it's Awesome Logseq or something, or I have a gist on GitHub, but you can grab my Grovebox theme, and it's always cool to be like, yeah, I'm the one that made that. Pretty much if I use an editor or something and I don't find Grovebox for it, I will be the one that makes the theme because I want Grovebox everywhere. But those are the things that I like about Logseq, top of mind things. Now, what are some things I do not like about Logseq? Some of the things I don't like are, like I said, the commit spam, where every time I'm on a page, I make a single change and I leave focus, it will push that change to GitHub, which means sometimes in a day I could have 100 commits on Logseq, which is ridiculous for my Git graph. I mean, it makes me look like a really super active developer, but it's kind of annoying, but it's not a deal breaker. I honestly don't care. I've tried to change the settings for the frequency of when the updates are, which you can do on the Logseq config file .edn. You can set your Git settings for, in the seconds for push and pull and all of this. It doesn't work. I don't know if I'm doing it wrong, but it just has not worked for me, so I haven't been able to get this to actually only sync on intervals instead of like immediately after every change. But like I said, not a deal breaker. One other thing that is not so much something I dislike, but just is, it's weird and it's something I have to get used to, and it's kind of annoying, is a lack of convention with, data log queries. Like, at least with like Obsidian and other types of apps, you can easily do things like regex or Boolean searches where, this word and this word and this word or these three words or whatever. And just using regular expressions too. This thing to actually get queries and return output, just like Rome, and maybe it's not exactly like Rome, but the query languages they use are different. And I believe it's because these applications are built off of Clojure script, Clojure itself, or basically any of these Lisp type languages. So there's lots of really weird syntax that I personally was not used to seeing. I've done a little bit of a delve into Lisp and it's interesting, but yeah, it's kind of a little difficult to get used to for at least the queries, but not a deal breaker. Anything good to use takes practice, but the first impression is just, I got to learn a whole brand new skill to really leverage some power in this. Thankfully, the community does offer, some people post their really useful queries and you can just use those. That's really useful. And I just did that for some of these things and it works great. Sometimes when you mess with some of these pages and you mess with the formatting, some things get weird, and I've had entire pages deleted, but thankfully, because of that con of every single instance I leave focus, a page gets pushed to GitHub, is that I can easily go back in there, copy all that content, and paste it back in and fix it. But it's annoying to have to fix these things. So sometimes it'll be like, I go to this regular expressions page that I literally just made. Right now it doesn't exist. So how I know it exists is when I can do something like just hit enter, and now I give it a bullet. And actually this just changed after the update, because before there would actually be a little piece of metadata up here that I could actually click on and edit. So if I tried to edit this page, it's not really going to let me do anything. But what I had to do before is when I enter the metadata, it would be, this is all that I have, regular expressions. And so I would actually see this. I don't know why this content isn't here anymore. Maybe it's because I'm using this as Markdown now. But normally it would say, yeah, this, properties. And then I would see this. But normally that would be there. It's not anymore. Annoying. But now I can do things like I could say add a tag, or oops. And that's another thing, is that when I hit Control Z or Command Z to undo something, sometimes it undoes far more than a single action. It'll just undo a whole bunch of stuff. That's also annoying. Tags, and I could say this is a, well, yeah, we're going to say language too. So yeah, now it has a tag, and it's a tagged language, and these are, yeah, so stuff. And I have to edit these things. And what I don't like is that before I would edit some of these things and it would just break. It would break the page. I haven't noticed any of these issues recently, and it is always important to keep in mind that this software is it's still very new. It's either beta or it's just coming out of beta, and if you're going to use these things like I am, like this, like I understand that I'm frustrated, but at the same time, this is a free and open source project. You don't have any like real right to demand things from people. You can expect, great software, and they're working on it. So you need to be patient with it. And that's the whole point, is that you need to be patient and, bear with these changes, report bugs, help out where you can, and contribute. So I'm patient with this, and I'm glad that some of these things aren't breaking anymore. Those are just some pain points I've noticed, but overall, I am incredibly pleased with using this application, and I really enjoy using it for this purpose. So we'll get a little bit more into the actual workflow, codified workflow that I'm using for this, because it's actually helping me keep track of my learning of technical material, giving me a history of my learning of technical material, and also making it so I can put resources to look at away for a while and return to them when I actually have time, and not clutter up my zettelkasten process by putting everything into Raindrop, or leaving a bunch of stuff in Obsidian waiting to be processed forever. So I've talked about pretty much all the other points I wanted to in this video, other than how do I actually use this on a day-to-day basis. So on a day-to-day basis, today I actually just had a message with my boss, and we were talking about regular expressions. So I didn't have a page here for regular expressions, so I linked one, and now it actually does exist. But then all in line, here's a to-do, here's this link, and then the actual file. So a lot of what I've been doing is on my daily notes every single day that I learn something new about technical material, or I want to give myself a to-do to return to it, is just like this. I was working with a bash script, and now I said to-do, bash, and then what I want to know is that case statements can have actions split across lines like this, instead of having everything on one line and doing double ampersands to chain commands, and you can do that. A couple other things about bash. This thing is about Rust and Python, and I just list out a bunch of these to-dos, and this is like, I did a lot of Python learning recently, and so I marked these as done, because I am done with these particular items. I might have some notes here, and in essence, what this log is me just writing about what I learned today, if it's a lot of content like this, but then I also link these pages. And on these pages, and Python is probably my best example, everything else is still getting ported over, but Python, if I open that up, is all of my notes about the language. I have a bunch of stuff collapsed here, different VS Code extensions. I have all the different libraries that I've been exposed to and that I'm building notes on, and what they're particularly used for, different coding conventions. I need to look through the PEPs a little bit more. Things like notes about decorators, different notes here about that, data structures, flow control functions, object-oriented programming, all this different stuff. And all of these things are all all the information I personally wanted to collect in a single place for Python. Now, every single day that I add new daily notes with those to-dos and checklist items with new notes and links and things, is that underneath every language or note that I tag, I'll see those tagged to-dos chronologically ordered by the daily notes. And so if I go back to the oldest things first and work my way forward, I basically have almost like an inbox for every single note that has a reference to it. And this is without getting too deep into all this other stuff that we all know about probably by now, of unlinked references, backlinks, yada, yada, yada. And with this, I can easily have a running inbox of things to add to this note, because this is where it all goes. It's a to-do, and I look at this and okay, yep, this is information, and I'm going to take this and then add it to the appropriate pages. So for instance, I might actually add this note to the inspect module and the XML module for Python, and not the Python page itself, which is just for the language. So this is what I do, is I look at these as like basically an inbox for each of these notes, process those to-do items, and then put the content in those notes. And it helps me organize, sort, file, link, and connect all this technical knowledge into one place. And I'm not just copying all the official documentation on something into my own system. It's things that I actually use and would care about myself. So like this is the whole point of using technical notes like this, is that you want, like I've seen on how to write the docs or something like that, at some website about documentation writing, is you want to have like JSON for the brain. You don't want to have to reread all the official documentation or go hunt for your answers. Sometimes you just want a very quick read that uploads all the information you need to get right back to where you were, like JSON. Just insert some data and you're going off and doing exactly what you need to do, because you now have all of the pertinent knowledge to do it. So that's like this particular example, workflow, starting a virtual environment with venv and using pip to get all the requirements for that virtual environment and deactivating the virtual environment. This would be like the workflow. I don't need to go read all the documentation for the venv module and figure out how to do, how to grab all my requirements, but with pip, because I don't need to read all those documents. All I need to know is, here's my step-by-step and a little bit about what they do, and bam, that's all I need to know to get up and running on a new workflow and get a new project going. And that's the whole point of all of this. Something really cool I like about Logseq is this contents page. Now, I don't really use too much about the graph unlike Obsidian, is because this kind of is functioning differently for me. But on the contents page, you can put like all these top of mind and things you want to have quick access to up here. And I have several things. Now, top of mind for me is like things that I'm focusing a lot on lately, which is for me, Python, VS Code, and Azure DevOps. Mostly that's because of work. Now, I have some stuff up right here under meta, which is queries, templates, and then all of these words. So queries, first of all, is, I actually have some custom CSS that expands my page size, so that's why it's crunching. But if I go to queries, and look what this is. So each bullet point is actually a query. So this is a query, but everything else under here is a part of that query. So if I actually click on this, and you can see ongoing tasks, but now here's the only query syntax. This is not as complex of a data log query as some of the other ones I've seen and have used. Like later, there's another one I'll show you, but this is really, really cool. Is query the to-dos, now, later, doing, etc. Basically all the to-do items. And here they are. This basically just gives you a list of every single pending to-do item, which is incredibly useful if you don't want to have to go and hunt on every single page for that inbox on that page, like I was talking about. So this one could help you shore up and find any of those ones that are floating around out there, not on a daily note, and without having to go to each page to find them. So this is really great for keeping up to date and on track of every single to-do you have floating around in your system. Now I also have tasks that I'm waiting for, which are none right now because I basically process real time. Templates, and this would be what templates I have. And basically the only template I have is a template for a programming language. So basically I want to make notes about a new programming language. I have a template that gives me some starting points, and that's really all it is. And then let's see here, documentation inline tags. So this is where I have a query that tells me which of these has my inline tags that I use for documentation. Now, this goes back to what I have over here, emoji tags. Now this is basically a hashtag and then a word. It's hashtag star, hashtag idea, etc. It's basically like these tags. But I use some CSS to actually customize the visual of these to make them like my emoji tags that I normally do, because that's what I wanted to do. Now, what I do is I have some things here that are like my top resources for, like documentation, which is something I'm really focusing a lot on work right now. So these are all of my tagged items for documentation, which are like really important, great resources for documentation. And those are those. And now I have star, which is like for really important things, or light bulb for ideas. Now, this last one actually failed, but this is like one of those data log queries I'm talking about. This syntax, at first glance, is like, what is going on? Eventually, I finally got a little bit of a hang of it. I'm not sure why it broke this time. Oh, I could fix it later, but basically some of these things are like flowing like this, and then the closure languages are kind of just, they're weird. But yeah, in essence, these are my queries. I don't use them too often, and mostly this is just like a testing page as well. But this task query is incredibly useful for when you don't want to go hunt down all those things that are floating out in space. So that's basically the one I care about the most. Now, going back to the table of contents, I have these links to all of those items as well. Now I have them all linked over here, but what is all this? So if I actually clicked on one of these to-dos right here, it doesn't take me to that note. It actually just changes it to doing, because that's actually the setting I have. On my config, you can actually have a setting that says preferred workflow to do, and so it actually gives you some documentation about it. So it's either now for now or later, or to do for to do and doing. So you click on that to do item, and it will actually toggle between to do and doing. Now what I have here is I actually do have some of these other ones over here, which is if I actually click the check mark, it would actually make it done, but there is now or later. Now I'm obviously not using now or later, but I just leave it here just in case. Now if I click on to do, it actually takes me to the to do page, not a query, but an actual page. So it shows me all of these backlinks and all these linked references. So basically every time you see a to do, this does the same thing as the query, but unlike the query will actually only show me the single line item, whereas to do actually does it like the actual backlinks feature and gives you a little bit more context sometimes. So you can actually expand this as well, which is useful if you want to see a little bit more about what this particular item is, like right here. Like, I don't know what this is, to do SQL what, but then when you expand it, you can see a little bit more about it, like, oh, I'm talking about CTEs here, or common table expressions. So, okay. So that's basically everything I have in my my contents page here. And you can actually have some of these other like tags, and click on a tag. Just like in Rome, tags and links are basically the same thing, because it's kind of the same thing. Click on language, and it's basically its own page. But page is tagged with language, and then you can actually have content about language. So this is something a little bit different, is that it's not like a linked reference like this is, but if you tagged it in the actual properties, like tags language, like I did before with regular expressions, it actually shows up here. So there's a lot of ways you can use this workflow and the different ways that Logseq displays information like Rome does into like how you want to organize and codify your information. Do you want to tag something in the properties section, basically the YAML of a page, and then have it tagged? Or do you want to just put it in line and have it in a linked reference? Or do you just want to have an actual inline link to that? And basically any way that you want to shape this information, you have control to do it. And it's really cool. Now, also in the content page, you have contents, which is what we were looking at. We have recent, which lets you see the most recent files you've edited, which is also really useful for me because I keep clicking this back button, which isn't fun. I don't like to open up so many tabs in here because then you get some syncing issues. So don't do that, because I've had some bad outcomes from doing that. But in this case, this will let me jump quickly back and forth between different pages that I've been on recently. That's helpful. And you also get a page graph. So this tells me, like, this is like the local graph in Obsidian. So if I actually went to Python and looked at the page graph for Python, it's pretty busy because there's a lot of also daily notes and stuff in here. And yeah, there's also a really good help documentation for Logseq in here. There's the details on data log queries. Could probably use a bit more work and more examples and a little bit more explanation and documentation, but be patient and forgiving of developers. They are doing their best. So this is some really helpful documentation as well. But if you wanted that global graph like in Obsidian, you can click the ellipsis up here, and there's other things you can do. You can import, export. I'm not going to get into like the desktop application and making a static site generated version of your notes, but that's all stuff you can do. I'm not, because I don't care that much at this point. I want to do a static site generator. We'll get there. At this point, my stuff is public, but it's not pretty. But you can do a view graph, which will let you see the entire collection of notes that you have. Now these orange yellowish ones are my actual tags, hashtag word, but the rest of these are all actual notes that exist. And you can see like Python takes up a big amount of space. There's a bunch of unlinked references. I'm not sure why Andy Matushak is mentioned. Oh, maybe it's about Orbit. But by default, the daily notes are excluded. If you show journals and you add those back in, it gets even busier and noisier. Now there's even less unlinked references. But you do have a local graph, and you can drag this out and do what you would normally do in Obsidian. Yeah. There's a lot more that's probably going to be coming from this application. What you can do with Clojure and any of these types of Lisp languages is pretty incredible, to be honest. So there's a lot of great things we can expect from this application, and I'm already really, really enjoying it for my technical notes and documentation. It makes it really easy to just see your own personal growth as you learn and develop your skills as a developer. So that's why I really enjoy it and why I'm using it. I know Santi is doing a lot more videos on Logseq than Obsidian these days, and I think he just put out a course too. But check that out, check him out, and yeah, let me know what you think about Logseq. Love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about Logseq and how I'm using it for my devlog today. Let me know if you have any questions. You can always send me questions on my FAQ repo. If you want to ask anything about tech or questions or anything like that, FAQ repo is the place to go. And as always, a big thank you to the people who help support this channel and all of the GitHub sponsors and Patreon patrons. Thank you all for all of your contributions to help this channel continue to thrive. Been going through a lot lately, trying to keep things going and get back on the video creation. So this is the first video I've made in a while, and it's new camera and trying to make the channel better. So thank you for all the support. It does make it worthwhile and really makes it motivating to continue to make content like this. So hopefully you enjoyed, and thank you all for your contributions. And on that note, I will catch you all in the next one.